You're very welcome along to the Matchbook NFL podcast coming to you live on YouTube. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by the dream team of Brad and Judah back in situ this week. And Judah, we missed you last week. We're 4 weeks into the NFL season. Now, for anyone maybe having a hard reset or a soft reset, because it's tough, the week grind, any sort of takeaways from the first 4 weeks in terms of the new rules, anything that you can sort of get ahead of the market a little bit with some value?
I think, like a couple of spots. Obviously, the kickoffs and field goals are definitely different this year. If Eddie Pinheiro is drilling 59-yarders with 5 yards to spare, there's something going on we know that the balls are a little bit different, but field goal plays and strategy, especially at the end of game, is a little different. And then, this is true for all weeks, but I think it was certainly true last week. Was just like turnovers go such a long way in influencing outcomes of games, and they're random and you can't always predict them. In some spots they're maybe a little less random. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Steelers are doing this every year considering their play style. But if you look at like the Colts-Rams game, which like that AD Mitchell kind of early celebration fumble, the Giants had no business winning that game against the Chargers. I'm sorry, I don't mean to I make you relive it there, but and then even just like punt returns for touchdowns. And I think that's also in kick returns. And I think this is a function of the new rules. But like that Eagles-Bucks game, I think goes a little bit different without some of those kick returns. And then also, I just have to say, end of game management has been a journey, as it is every single year. I've seen this now twice. And in really, there's a Colts game against the Broncos in week 2 where the Colts kind of just give up trying to move the ball on offense, run the ball 3 times, settle for a 60-yard field goal. Again, talk about the new rules and the kickoffs. And they end up getting bailed out by a penalty. And then we saw it again in Chicago Raiders, where the Raiders, again, just kind of get extreme. They're happy to settle for a long field goal. That obviously goes the way it did. And it is in many ways a new NFL and in many ways a very, very different NFL.
Yeah, Brad, ending on that, I guess, end of games. I know it's not new rules related, but even the Rams 49ers, for anyone that hasn't watched the highlights, well worth watching it because you feel like it's the end of the game and there's still 6 minutes left the highlights package. You knew something was about to happen on the goal line.
Yeah, I've not caught up with that one yet. I agree with you. It does feel like special teams is having a bigger impact than I can ever recall, which, as we spoke about last week, it just seems to add more variance. So I think one way to get that onside is alt lines, is underdog on the money line, things like that, trying to take bigger prices because I don't know, New England, Carolina last week, it was like 42-13, but you look at the adjusted scores, and Carolina won the success rate in that game by like 6%. It was 50-43, the adjusted scores. If you take into account success rates, EPA, things like that, it was like 24-23, but there was a 30-point difference in the score. So the special teams are creating some weird scores and some big margins. So I think you want to get some volatility on side in some of these bets.
Yeah, definitely makes a more fun watch, but like the guy said, volatile when it comes to betting. Before we get going, a reminder, if you haven't signed up to a Matchbook account, you want to take advantage of our NFL products. You can bet multiples there. You can bet all the props in a bet builder, singles, whatever way you'd like to attack the NFL. You can enter the bonus code POD50. That's POD50. It's our most generous offer currently, and it's exclusive to podcast listeners. £50 in free bets when you bet £50. And if you take 2 seconds to hit that like button wherever you're watching or listening, and of course the guys' bets are recapped on insights.matchbook.com. Judah, we're going to start with you with an interesting one here. The Bengals plus 10.5 hosting the Detroit Lions. Where is your way in with this one? Because I'm trying to think of how the Bengals can keep this close, and I guess they're going to have to score a fair amount of points.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the Lions can kind of front run any team and win with margin, but I think the Lions defense is a little bit different than the Vikings and Broncos that Jake Browning struggled so much with. I think those are probably 2 of the top 5, if not 2 of the top 2 defenses in the NFL this year. And they are very hurt in the secondary. I think DJ Reed's going to miss. Terrion Arnold is putting up some of the worst numbers, and he's going to be out there a whole bunch. And it's not just that he's going to be out there, but also this is a team which plays a ton of man coverage. And that kind of highlights the matchup between the wide receivers and cornerbacks more so than a team that plays a lot of zone. And yes, it's Jake Browning throwing the ball, but he's still got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, both of whom are certainly have the matchup advantage against these Lions corners. And I think when you just look at the number of points which the Lions would need to score here, and I think it's baking in a lot of Cincinnati offense really bad. And I guess I would put a little more stock on the defenses that they've played the last 2 games, and I don't envision this similar scenario. This is a ton of points. If you're including home field advantage, we're looking at like a 12-point differential, and I just don't think in this matchup I can kind of get to that 12.
Okay, and Brad, anything to add on that? I guess the case being 10.5 probably just too much for the Lions to cover here on the road.
Yeah, I did have the same bet in the sheet earlier, but changed it because I wasn't sure I would make a coherent case for the Bengals. But it is one I bet as well. Yeah, basically the same. Yeah, they faced 2 incredibly tough defenses for a backup quarterback. And I just think it should be 8.5. Well, the Lions they opened -8.5 home to the Browns last week, went off -10. So should they really be then laying 10.5 on the road in Cincinnati? I don't think there's a massive difference between the Browns and Bengals at the minute. So yeah, agree with Judah. It's just too many. And I would say one little prop maybe to take advantage of those banged up corners. T. Higgins touchdown. He's been targeted fairly decently by Jake Browning. 2 red zone targets last week, 79 air yards, and he did absolutely nothing with it against a tough matchup. So maybe with an easier matchup, that usage turns into touchdowns and yards for T. Higgins.
Okay, so T. Higgins, one to keep an eye on there for the Bengals if they want to take advantage hosting the Lions. And Brad, we'll stick with you and Cowboys at the Jets. Cowboys obviously played that cracking Sunday night game at the Packers, ending in a draw. Their travel to New York here, Jets +2.5. You've had some success with the Jets this year, and it's been a variance in terms of following the Jets every week, which is probably about right.
Yeah, the Jets have been unlucky. I think one of the most unlucky teams in the league to be 0-4. So last week against Miami, talking about success rates, they lost the game. Was it 27-21? But by success rates and adjusted scores, they won that game by about 6 points, or should have won. But there were 5 fumbles in the game. Miami recovered all 5. They lost 10 expected points on kickoffs. For the year, the Jets are actually 11th in offensive success rate, which I think nobody would tell you, and kind of again suggests they've had some bad luck. The Cowboys, one horrible spot, overtime. They played the full 5 quarters last week against, obviously, in a big matchup against Micah Parsons. So I feel there's potential for a letdown. The offensive line is an absolute mess. No starting center, no starting right guard. Both the left tackle and the left guard are questionable, been missing practice. So that is going to be a key one to monitor. If they both miss, then I think the Cowboys are in real trouble. But if they both play, then maybe this is tighter. DVOA for the year, these teams are 23 and 24. The Cowboys 1 spot higher, which again just doesn't suggest to me that they should be laying 2.5 points on the road. Outdoors. So yeah, again, I think this should be close to a pick, and you can get +125 on the money line, something like that. So I think you're getting a few cents of value.
Okay, decent case, Judah, for the Jets. What's your take on where they're at, and would you agree with Brad in terms of how much he rates their offense?
Yeah, I think the success rate is fine, but I think it kind of misses some element relative to a kind of league average team or randomly sampled team, just because they don't really have an explosive passing offense. And you can be successful down to down running the ball, but it's kind of a problem in conditional probability if you're just going to keep marching 10 yards at a time, which is how the Jets are designing their offense. So it's just you got to do it 6 times in a row to actually score in the end zone. And even if you've got a 70% success rate, you're going to fail at one point on the drive, and you're almost not explosive enough to overcome that. And turnovers are going to be more likely. Or I should say they'll be much more harmful also when they do occur. I'd also just have some concerns about the matchup here. I think Dallas has been one of the best offenses in the NFL, kind of surprisingly, and putting up 40 points on the Packers is certainly a shock. But they're number 2 in series conversion rate, and the Jets have shown no ability to defend anyone on defense. They have no pass rush right now either, so I kind of be concerned on that side of the ball. I'm just not sure they're the passing offense that can take advantage of Dallas was just so weak, and even if they are capable, I don't have confidence that they're actually going to throw the ball. This is a team which is just running consistently, and that has been an area where Dallas has been pretty good. So, of course, they can win that matchup, and this has been a terrific running game, as Brad mentions. But I would have my concerns about the matchup.
Yeah, Judah basically said no there, Brad.
A lot of words to say no. The Jets are 12th in explosive play percentage. Like they're not garbage. They've just turned it over too much. Which it might continue because Fields is he's another volatile character. But yeah, I like the spot, and I think the injuries could be big on the Dallas O-line.
Yeah, maybe down to the coaching staff and whether they actually do throw the ball. Judah, Ravens, best team in football, decimated with injuries. How do you try and get a team into your power rankings or where they sit, and how do you handicap a game when there's just so much going on in terms of the injury report?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but that's probably the source of its value. Maybe I should probably go to the alts here, but I've never seen an injury report quite like the Ravens defense right now. Like the entire team is hurt. We're just starting a ton of backups. This projects to me as, look, it's temporary because it's injury based, but maybe the worst defense in football. And on the Houston side, like they have a real problem on the offensive line and in protecting CJ Stroud. But I don't know if the Ravens are going to be able to do anything on the pass rush front to take advantage of that. It's also, when we talk about, obviously the main kind of driver of this is Cooper Rush as opposed to Lamar Jackson. We look at a team like the Jets, right? They don't have to change their offense so much when they go from Justin Fields to Tyrod Taylor. And the Ravens have been this way in the past when, you kind of insert Tyler Huntley and you don't have to change the offense because it's a different play style. For the Ravens now, you're going from like an extremely mobile quarterback and Lamar Jackson, obviously, to one of the least mobile quarterbacks in Cooper Rush. And you kind of have to totally revamp the offense. Mind you, it's better than him coming in, for a Hort Jackson because they do have at least a week to prepare. But especially if they don't have Ronnie Stanley, this is a disaster for Cooper Rush dropping back against Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter with some backup tackles. It just seems like a total mismatch, and I don't think the market has kind of moved enough on the Texans. This is a Ravens injury report that makes the team a complete shell of themselves.
Okay, yeah. Anything to add there, Brad?
Yeah, I bet Houston team total over 20.5 earlier today. Yeah, but the same thing. The Ravens are missing like an entire starting defense, and I just didn't really know what to do with Cooper Rush. You would think, as Judah says, it should be a mess, stepping into an offense designed for Lamar. But yeah, I just find it harder to visualize. So I kind of just stuck on one side of the ball. But yeah, but broad agree with what Judah says.
Okay, depends which way you want to tackle that game. Now, Brad, we spoke about the Chargers. We speak about them nearly every week. You always go against them every week. Commanders, you're going to the well again, +3 at the Chargers. What have you seen that's missing in that team for you to fade them again?
Well, they still don't have an offensive or defensive line. That's the fundamental. They're bottom 5 in both. They're missing obviously left and right tackle this week. And Washington, it's not an elite pass rush, but they've got Von Miller out there. They've got Daron Payne on the interior. They've got the former Cowboy, whose name I forget while I pull it up here. Can't remember. Anyway, Washington, they're 13th in pressure rate. Dorrance Armstrong is the guy I was trying to remember. So Chargers without both tackles against a decent pass rush. So I like that there. Then obviously the question when Washington have the ball is Jaden Daniels healthy? From everything I'm reading, and the old Twitter doctors, Dr. Chow was saying he expects Jaden to be basically 100%. Probably could have gone last week, but they didn't want to risk him. And there's some history in Washington of obviously rushing young black mobile quarterbacks out there without fully healthy legs, and that's not gone well for them in the past. So I do wonder if that played a role. But yeah, so if I kind of expect Jaden to be fully healthy, and then the Commanders' offensive line, Brandon Thorne has them ranked 6th in the NFL. They're actually 6th by pass block win rate as well. And then the Chargers defensive line, Thorne has them 30th. Obviously, Khalil Mack's gone down. They have not much anywhere else. So yeah, you just have massive advantages on both lines. And they're a 3-point underdog in a stadium which is not really historically given much of a home field. It feels like a great bet to me.
Okay, yeah. Judah, what are your thoughts? Where do you land on this game?
I think I partially agree with Brad. I can't bet it. I agree with the offensive line, defensive line, and the Chargers are certainly hurt on the offensive line, and Washington has been surprisingly good in basically every kind of pass rush metric. What does scare me is that Justin Herbert has shown a remarkable ability to scramble so far this year and extend plays, which I think can mitigate this defensive line. And the secondary of Washington is a complete disaster right now. They are second worst in yards per attempt. They're bleeding explosive plays. That's where the Chargers have been killing teams. And I'm not sold that Jaden Daniels is going to be completely healthy. We had some sample of this last year where Daniels was playing through an injury. He was not scrambling as often, and as a result was kind of not the same player. It's, of course, a small sample. It's a different situation. He could be fully healthy. But I'd rather kind of see it first, certainly before kind of assuming full health, as I anticipate the market is doing right now.
Okay, and before we move on to long shots, Brad, you've got a couple of selections here, but every week we're going to do £10 money back special, money back on a bet builder treble. If the bet loses, you get a free bet back up to £10, full T's and C's on Insights, and it's Dolphins at Panthers. So this is the game of the week for you.
Yes. So we spoke earlier about that misleading Dolphins game at the Jets where Dolphins lost the stats fairly handily but won the game. And then we also spoke earlier about the misleading Carolina score where they lost by 30. And again, it was a very close game by the actual underlying stats. And it's rare that you have the two most misleading games and then the teams playing each other. So I think we have the classic Panthers underrated because of that and Dolphins overrated. And not to mention, obviously, the entire Dolphins offense has been built around Tyreek Hill for years. And for a long time, I've been convinced that the market underrates the loss of a field stretching receiver, just in the amount of space it gives to other people, and then B, like the full alpha Justin Jefferson type guy. So, what does Miami have without Tyreek Hill? They have the dead worst offensive line in football. They have a quarterback who can't really move and makes boneheaded decisions. Jalen Waddle's been quiet for 2 years now, and now is going to be asked to carry the offense. So I don't really know what Miami have. So I kind of think this is a bit of a wrong team favored. Carolina is another team by success rate, sneakily good. Carolina defense 8th by success rate. The offense is 13th. Miami is 30th and 24th. So significantly worse in both. So yeah, I think Carolina should be favored here. And then if we want to attack the Miami defense, which is 31st in EPA per play, 32nd in success rate, 31st in EPA per drop back, I'm going to go with Tet McMillan, the rookie, he's been performing well, but he's the clear number one receiver here, 38% of the air yards. And here's his air yards by week: 102, 84, 78, 106. So his lowest has been 78. But he's lined here, probably, lines are varying, but on Matchbook at the minute around 65-ish. And he's got possibly the easiest matchup you could get. Storm Duck, the Miami corner. He's been missing practice all week. So I feel, you tie Carolina money line, McMillan 70 plus receiving yards and McMillan touchdown, and that gets you to around 5-1, slightly above 5-1, 6.25 to be precise.
Okay, yeah, Judah, that bet builder there. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see that angle. I'm also kind of very heavy on the Carolina passing offense. The Jets refused to throw on Monday night until the very end, and they did have some success once they did decide to throw. But this is as bad a secondary as it gets. And I do think last week, kind of for the Panthers, as Brad mentioned, got out of hand by some punt returns, and the game script was a real negative very, very quickly. And I don't anticipate kind of seeing a similar scenario So absolutely like the Carolina passing angle there.
Okay, let's go on to long shots here. I asked the guys for one long shot each week. Judah, just looking at the Eagles' results there, 1-score games in all 4-0. They've been likened in everywhere, it seems, to last year's Kansas City Chiefs. Is there value to take them on while they're 4-0? And if there is, what is the angle into this game?
I think so. I mean, it always feels kind of tough going against them, and I do think their success relative to any other team is not as random. Like you just look at the Rams last night, even, and like on 4th and 1, it's or even like down and close. It's a question of like, okay, are they going to get there? Whereas the Eagles, it's automatic, right? Like that 4th and 1 play where the Rams failed to convert, the Eagles just convert, and they do this every time they're in short yardage situation, and they just, if you're getting inside the 10, it's like they score a touchdown every time. I actually think they have scored a touchdown 10 out of 10 times. So it's not completely random, but I think to your point, like this is not a team that has played like a 4-0 one, and they've certainly been on the right side of a lot of variance here. They lead the NFL on like third and 3 and out rate. Like that is crazy for a team that is 4-0, and the offense has just not been the same. I think I'm like very, very concerned with the offensive line. This is a team that basically since Jalen Hurts started, and I mean, they've had, Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson as cogs on the offensive line the whole time. They've basically been top 5 in kind of any pass rush metric you'd ever want to use. But this is a team, if I'm just looking at their like perfect block rate, that was like 3rd, 2nd, 1st in the NFL all these years, and it's like 21st now. And Jalen Hurts is a quarterback who's particularly sensitive to his offensive line holding up. And the interior has just been a complete disaster this year. Now they're going up against a Broncos defense that leads the NFL in basically every pressure category for a quarterback that's very sensitive to pressure. And I think certainly if you get into a negative game state here, and I don't think Philly's going to have the easiest time kind of building leads unless they continually force turnovers, and kind of setting yourself up for a situation where the Eagles continue to struggle to move the ball. And on the flip side, the Broncos offense, look, I don't think Bo Nix is quite the answer at quarterback, but certainly in the last couple of weeks, and if you even look at the totality of the stats, is improving relative to last year. And on a drive level, this is a team still kind of moving the ball at like a top 10 clip. This is an Eagles defense that is not the same as it was last year. I mean, Jalen Carter should play, but he's dealing with some injuries here. They've been very vulnerable on the ground and through the explosives, and that's kind of how the Broncos want to operate their offense, which is a bunch of quick passes, the runs, and then throwing those deep balls to Sutton and Mims. And I think that kind of sets up very well. So I like this play on the tails just because I think if the Eagles get into a negative game script, it is a really, really terrible matchup for them, given the state of the offensive line, given how good the Broncos defense has been. And I just don't see kind of how they're going to dominate Denver. And I think this could, even be a close game, which Denver ekes out by a touchdown late.
Okay, yeah, Brad, interesting from Judah in that Eagles like 4th and 1 automatically done. I mean, he's not really just talking about the touch push; he's talking about just everything. They're just doing the simple things correctly. Hard thing to quantify, is it, or is that something you can put a number on?
It is hard to quantify. Did you Sauce Gardner this week talking about how because the Jets are losing, he feels like the games get called differently. Like he gets called for more penalties than when they're winning, and I feel like there is something to that. Like you anyone who's watched Brady for years, like they just always got those calls, all those tiny little things. So there might be something to the Super Bowl champions. Everyone expects them to win. The corner gets away with a little hold when he shouldn't do, and they complete they stop a 3rd down or whatever. So there is probably something there. It is obviously tough to quantify because they're, as Judah says, their normal metrics look fairly bad. But in this game, I do quite like AJ Brown, say 60 plus receiving yards. He had 4 last week, and then obviously he did his Instagram about if you're not wanted, move on. So I'm sure he will get peppered with targets this week to shut him up.
Yeah, it's been the theme of the season, to be fair. And we've already spoken about Washington, Brad, but you're going to go on the alts against the Chargers.
Yeah, this is kind of if health is a question, which I think it is somewhat priced in the line. I think if Jaden was perfectly healthy, I don't think this would be 3. So if he is perfectly healthy, would anyone be surprised if they win this game by 10? I wouldn't be at all. So yeah, if he's healthy, then this is a good price, basically. And as I say, I think he is. But it's a way to get more paid if you are right about that question, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, cool. That's the long shot. So Washington -3 at the Chargers, Broncos -5.5 at Eagles. That double now would pay into the double figures as well if you want a fun one there. And you can back that on Matchbook. Best bet time due to the Raiders at the Colts. Colts -6.5, 186. What is the case here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a Colts offense, which the market has still is still reluctant to move to. I think they're a top 5 offense in the NFL, if not better than that. If you look at basically any stat, it will reveal that story. And I think they've done it against some tougher defenses. And this is not the toughest of defenses they're going to face. It's a Raiders team that is bottom 5 in EPA. You're not far behind in yards per attempt. They haven't even had the most difficult of opposing offenses they faced. And this is also a team that has really, really struggled on the offensive line and is now going to be without basically the one cog they've had in Colton Miller. It's just a whole bunch of weak links on the offensive line for a quarterback that is extremely sensitive to pressure. And Geno Smith, certainly given where Las Vegas was last year on the offensive line, it seemed like he would finally kind of be in a situation where he had more time to throw. It's just not been the case at all. He's getting disrupted on 53% of plays. The league average is like 40%. He's now going up against a defense which has been a Colts team that has been one of the better ones in creating disruption. Even having some emerging players on that defensive line. I just don't see. I think the Colts are going to move the ball at will, and I don't see how the Raiders are going to do anything to protect Geno Smith here. And the margins for the Raiders, at least, are so high, given just how successful the Colts offense has been. And I can expect that to continue, given the state of the Raiders defense.
Okay, that's Colts -6.5 hosting the Raiders at 186. And Brad, final word to you. Vikings at Browns, London game. It seems a huge advantage for the Vikings staying from Dublin to London. Travel advantage, rest advantage as well there, of course. What you're going to take on one of the running backs in Jordan Mason under 67.5 rushing yards. What's the angle?
Yeah, I was just looking for the best way to take advantage of the trench mismatch here, where Vikings, I'm sure most people watched that game in Ireland last week, where the offensive line was just battered throughout. So they could be without 3 starters this week: left guard, center, right tackle, and they couldn't really protect. Obviously, they gave up a load of sacks last week, and then they did come back late. But I would say probably the team you least want to face with a 3/5 backup offensive line is Myles Garrett, Malik Collins, Mason Graham, and the Browns, who are first in pass rush win rate, 4th in sacks per attempt. And so specifically for this bet, they're 2nd in success rate against the run. And yeah, Jordan Mason is kind of priced as he was last week, really. But it feels to me like this is just a massive, massive mismatch on the interior. And I don't really see how he's getting any sort of efficiency. So Jordan Mason under 67.5, around 1.85 on Matchbook.
Okay, and Steelers did get a lot of joy in that area last week. My thanks to Brad and Judah, all done within 30 minutes for your listening pleasure. But you can, of course, check out all tips recapped on InsideStopMatchbook.com. That will be live for you, that article, on Friday afternoon. My thanks to Brad and Judah. We'll be back next week to preview week 6. Best of luck with your bets. If you're having a bet, make sure you check out Matchbook's bet builders, but also our exchange pricing as well if you're playing those big singles. We'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.